Infrastructure and Public Safety is going to come to order. We're going to start in a subcommittee, and when we get a quorum, we'll go right to a roll call and get our quorum. But we're going to start in subcommittee with Representative Toalson Reisch's House Bill 392. And Representative, you can start when you're ready.
Thank you, Chairman. House Bill 392 is the Missouri Task Force 1 bill that has passed out of this committee unanimously last year. It has passed out of the House the last 3 years straight unanimously. What this has to do with USERA reemployment rights. When Missouri Task Force 1 is deployed, say, to a Joplin tornado, they're treated one way, but if they're deployed out of the state of Missouri, they're treated differently, and this would just make their reemployment rights the same.
I have no questions for you. Do you have any witnesses?
No.
Anybody here to testify in favor? Anybody for opposition? Opposition or in favor?
No, it's in favor.
Okay, in favor. Sorry, I didn't know you'd be here, Arnie. Go ahead when you're ready.
No, that's all right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Arnie C. AC-Dinoff, State Public Advocate, and I'm in favor of this bill. I was in favor of it when it went through the House. It just kind of hits me the wrong way that these heroes that are deployed across the country or across Missouri that are out there saving lives are put in this position where employers are threatening their employment or docking them for salary and pay. This is a worthwhile cause. It's out there saving lives across the country. It just makes a lot of sense. I just can't believe in today's age that we're even talking about this issue. Task Force 1 should be treated as military. They have a task to do, and they're out there doing public safety and doing the best for our country and for our state. For those reasons, I fully support this bill. Let's get it across the finish line through the Senate, and let's get it on the governor's desk to be signed into law. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I have no questions for you.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to testify in favor of House Bill 392? Anybody for opposition? Anybody for informational purposes only? That'll conclude the hearing on House Bill 392. Thank you, Representative. We're going to go to Representative Sassman next, House Bill 142. Representative, you proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Bruce Sassman, State Representative in District 61. I'm here to present House Bill 142, distribute information to all the members of the committee. House Bill 142 is simply a licensing bill that allows the Missouri Conservation and Heritage Foundation to, for those folks who want to purchase a license plate from the Missouri Conservation and Heritage Foundation, can go directly to the License Bureau and pay their fee for a specialty plate. Some fees are paid or could be paid online. Some have to be paid from a vendor. This just makes it easy for folks to go directly to the license office, pay the fee along with their other costs, and get their license. Pretty slam dunk stuff. Any questions?
Great. I have no questions for you. Anybody here to testify in favor of House Bill 142? Anybody here in opposition?
Good morning again, Mr. Chairman, members of the, well, nobody's here. My name is Arnie C. AC-Dinoff, State Public Advocate, and I testified against this bill in the Missouri House. The reason that I testified against this bill is we have way too many license plates for way too many causes and functions. It's really confusing employees in the Department of Revenue if you speak to them. It also really confuses law enforcement. The law enforcement officers that I've spoken to and had interaction across several counties and several areas is when they come up and pull over somebody for a traffic stop or a traffic issue, or try to see if their license plate is in compliance with the sticker. There's too many colors in all these specialized plates. So it's really hard to recognize even our own state plates. And so we're really confusing law enforcement and we're confusing employees in the Department of Revenue. For those reasons, I'm opposed to this bill. I think that we have other heritage and other conservation license plates already available. If you look at the website of the Missouri Department of Revenue, they're readily available for a $15 additional fee. And I'm opposed to adding another license plate that confuses law enforcement and employees at the Missouri Department of Revenue. That's my testimony, Mr. Chairman.
I don't have any questions for you. Anybody else here to testify in opposition to House Bill 142? Seeing none. Anybody here for informational purposes only? That'll conclude the hearing on House Bill 142. Thank you, Representative. We'll now go to Representative Schnelting on House Bill 282. And Representative, you can begin when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Representative Schnelting. I represent Eastern St. Charles County, and I'm here to present House Bill 282 to you. House Bill 282 is the legislation that we've passed several years in a row, I believe in the last 3 years in the House of Representatives. It allows you to carry concealed firearm, concealed weapon on public transportation systems. The bill is not a partisan measure. As you're aware, crime and violence do not discriminate. It doesn't matter your political affiliation, your race, it doesn't matter your religion. We all have the potential of running into situations where at some point we are required to defend ourselves and those we love. I do believe the legislation will discourage criminal activity on our public transportation systems, which does exist. There's a reason police officers and our law enforcement is seizing illegal firearms. It's because there are illegal firearms already on public transit. But most importantly, I believe the legislation ensures the right to self-defense by allowing those who have undergone firearms training to carry aboard the public systems that they fund with their own tax dollars, like most of the other states already do. We did make a few changes to the underlying version. Since my first term, several of these changes were adopted on the House floor, and I've included them in here. This allows an active duty member of the military to go without the live fire portion of their training, so long as they're up to date and they go through the requisite training for the state portion of the CCW test. It lowers the age to 18, the age from 19 to 18, at which point you can obtain a CCW. It also has a criminal justice reform piece where it tweaks the statutes to allow those with a suspended imposition of sentence to lawfully obtain a permit. For public officials, it provides an exemption for current and former members of the judiciary and state legislature to carrying concealed and gun-free zones, similar to what we already have in statute for current judges. That is not in place for former judges. And lastly, on the House floor, it removed there was an amendment to add houses of worship to the list of, to remove it from the list of gun-free zones. So if churches can still decline to allow you to carry in their churches, this would just take them off the list that says, hey, you cannot carry here automatically out of our statute. So with that, I'll open up if there aren't any questions, Mr. Chair.
I don't have any questions for you, Representative. How many here, just by show of hands, how many here testify in favor of this bill? How many are here in opposition to the bill? Okay, let's start with in favor, and we'll just go back and forth. So one in favor, then one in opposition. So if you're here to testify in favor, come forward. Make sure that you fill out a witness form for our records and testify when you're ready.
Susan Myers of the 20th, filled out online, but submitting my written as well. As someone who lives a concealed carry lifestyle and volunteers my time to help other women learn to safely handle and carry firearms, I support this bill. I am strongly opposed to deadly gun-free zones remaining in Missouri statute. Today I want to provide you with facts that clearly counter the dire warnings those who oppose these changes continue to encourage us to believe would be the calamitous result were this bill to become law. To start, you may be surprised to learn that right up until the Supreme Court's decision in the New York State Rifle and Pistol Association v. Bruin last June, there were only 3 states New Mexico, Illinois, and Missouri that restricted carry on public transit. 47 states were somehow managing to make carrying on buses and trains work out just fine for their citizens. After Bruin, we've seen New York, Hawaii, and New Jersey join that list. As for churches, prior to Bruin, there were only 10 states that had carry restrictions in place. 8 of those, including Missouri, have the with permission language, and 2 have stronger restrictions. Since Bruin, Louisiana and New York have added church carry bans. But how many states had restrictions on both public transit and church carry? Before Bruin, Missouri was the only state to restrict both locations. But take heart, we are alone no longer, as we have now been joined by freedom-loving New York. It's important to note a federal judge has issued a temporary restraining order against New Jersey's new sensitive places law. Another federal judge did the same for New York's, but a 3-judge panel of the Second Circuit issued a stay on that last December. Gun-free zones are being challenged on several fronts, with many favorable rulings for carry rights seen thus far as these cases continue through the process. With the continued failure of the legislature to address this issue, it's a pity no one has gone after Missouri's overreach in court yet. It is wrong for Missouri to be more restrictive than the majority of states when it comes to public transit and churches. It bears repeating. Today, 44 states allow public transit carry, and 38 states have no mention whatsoever of churches in their list of restricted locations. We are better on the Second Amendment than that, and if not, then we certainly should be. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I don't have any questions for you. Anybody else? Or, I'm sorry, we're going to go to opposition. So one person in opposition, you want to step up and go ahead and testify when you're ready, and please leave a witness form.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mary Gross. I live in St. Louis County, and I've been a volunteer leader with Moms Demand Action for Gun Sense in America for 9 years. I am testifying on behalf of all these red-shirted people behind me, so we're not all going to testify, just myself, okay? So on behalf of Moms Demand Action, I want to urge opposition to HB282, a bill which would force guns inside houses of worship and also onto public transportation. Speaking for an organization that rigorously advocates only for safety measures that are supported by evidence, it's important to me to say this up front. There is no evidence to support the notion that flooding sensitive locations with guns will reduce gun violence. We see no reason to infuse guns into more places such as churches and buses. This will just put more people at risk in those spaces by allowing more people to carry loaded handguns. Our religious leaders are charged with the safety and security of congregants. Worship environments differ widely from each other. Worship spaces should reflect what best serves the needs of their communities. This bill bypasses and disregards the authority and the autonomy of the organization and their leaders to make decisions about their own houses. They are most familiar with their congregation and their environment. Their autonomy should be respected. Keep in mind that we are talking about families, we're talking about infants, children, elderly, vulnerable populations. Missourians should be able to worship free from the threat of armed intimidation and gun violence. Think about how much of our land is now devoted to churches, synagogues, and mosques. This bill would vastly expand the number of places in Missouri where firearms are now legally forced. These are common spaces open to many where families would potentially be exposed to threats. HB 282 will also force public transit systems to allow individuals to carry concealed firearms. We all have the right to be safe from guns while we're just trying to go to school or go to work on public transportation. We should not have to fear that an armed rider could endanger the safety of everyone on a bus or a train. This bill places even more guns in public spaces in our state at a time when we currently have little foundational gun violence prevention laws. In summary, allowing concealed loaded guns in churches, buses, and other public spaces continues to undermine the safety of our citizens. I believe that the sponsors of this bill want to save lives. I really do believe that. However, this bill would have the opposite effect. I urge members of this committee to vote no on this dangerous, unnecessary bill and to keep Missouri public transit and houses of worship safe from firearms. Thank you for prioritizing safety.
Thank you for your testimony. Thank you for being here this morning. I don't have any questions for you, so thank you for showing up. All right, now in favor, someone else in favor of House Bill 282. Please proceed when you're ready.
Good morning. I'm Mark Luther from Bridgeton, Missouri in St. Louis County. I urge that House Bill 282 be forwarded for action in the Senate. I believe that criminals are opportunistic, and the more places there are that they know they're going to be very, very safe, and they can wreak havoc on anybody in there with reckless abandon. The more difficult it is for them to do that, the better it is for the good people of Missouri. Thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. All right, somebody in opposition? Someone else in opposition? Proceed when you're ready.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mike Winter, I represent the Missouri Public Transit Association and Citizens for Modern Transit. We've appeared in front of your committee before earlier this year on Senator Schroer's standalone concealed carry bill. We obviously have concerns with the concealed carry on public transit provisions of this bill. We noted those concerns in the earlier hearing, so I'm not going to run through those again, but we don't believe that introduction of additional firearms potentially on any of our buses or trains is going to make them any safer. It introduces a serious situation of a even more hostile environment under high stress, and we don't believe that guns are going to be beneficial to trying to bring some of those circumstances to a peaceful resolution. So we're opposed to House Bill 282.
Thank you for your testimony. Somebody in favor of House Bill 282, come on up.
My name is William Bland, and I live in Liberty, Missouri. I'm on the board of the Western Missouri Shooters Alliance, and I'm a CCW permit holder. I am here on behalf of myself and the Alliance. I and the Alliance strongly support this bill and feel it is long overdue to be enacted into law to protect some of our most vulnerable citizens. Current law prevents law-abiding citizens from exercising their Second Amendment rights in the entirety of their day or night if using public transportation is a part of that time. Waiting for public transit or disembarking is quite possibly more dangerous than riding on the conveyance itself. This is especially true late at night or in the early morning hours when many are just getting off work. What the opposition fails to recognize is that CCW permit holders are not the problem. We have been photographed, fingerprinted, investigated, and vetted. We have to demonstrate competency with a firearm. Members of law enforcement are 6 times more likely than CCW permit holders to commit a misdemeanor or felony using a gun, or firearm, excuse me. I have previously testified in support of this and similar bills. Those in opposition have testified that the presence of a CCW permit holder would unduly alarm many passengers and they would abandon public transportation altogether, although it was not explained how passengers would be aware that a concealed weapon was present. It is also curious to me that these same passengers are not alarmed to the point of abandonment by criminal elements carrying illegal firearms. A representative of Kansas City ATA testified that buses were safe because there were security officers on some of the buses. This is merely an advertisement as to which buses were most vulnerable. With regard to churches as gun-free zones, current law allows CCW permit holders to carry concealed in a church with written permission from a church authority. By granting permission, the church is exposed to liability in the event of a CCW permit holder with such permission is involved in an unfortunate incident involving a firearm, even if the action is justified. The proposed change would allow anybody with a CCW permit to carry concealed in a church. This helps shield the church from liability. And if the church does not want firearms on the premises, they need only post the appropriate signage at the entrance. This is a win-win for the churches and the congregates. Mass shootings in churches are very real. I'm a member of my church's security team, but we cannot be everywhere at all times. The proposed change would allow other permit holders in a church to be a force multiplier in preventing another tragedy.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody here next to testify in opposition to House Bill 282?
Mr. Chairman, members of the committee, Jorgen Schlemer on behalf of Greater St. Louis, Inc. I want to go on record in opposition to the bill and let our opposition to the bill that was heard earlier stand for this hearing as well.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Who else here to testify in favor of House Bill 282?
Good morning, members of the committee. Mr. Chairman, my name is Arnie C. A.C. Dinos, State Public Advocate. And on March 3rd, when this was in the House, I was opposed to this legislation. Since then, I have asked that it be amended, and it has been amended, and therefore I am now in support of this bill. If any of you have experienced what I have experienced, unsafe environments on metro trains and buses in St. Louis, in Kansas City, on platforms throughout Amtrak, I've experienced this, and it's a very uncomfortable situation without being allowed to have weapons or a gun to defend yourself. So as I said on 3/8/23, I was opposed, but I'm now in favor of this bill. I was opposed to the overall bill, but it's now been amended to my satisfaction. I support carrying in churches, synagogues, and places of worship throughout Missouri. We see this happening in Texas, Virginia, and other states where places of worship were attacked. And because of the swift action of people within the church, the danger or the person shooting the gun, trying to create danger and havoc and killing people, was kept to a minimum, and that threat was taken out. I support carrying firearms on buses, trains, and inside terminals. The parts of the bill that I opposed, I asked for an amendment to strip out the changes, and it's been done. I opposed waiving the requirement allowing certain felons to carry and conceal permits. Unfortunately, I'm not sure exactly if that's still in the bill or not, but I think that if somebody commits a felony crime, that they also waive or lose their right to carry a gun or a weapon in public. The second thing that I opposed was giving special privileges to members of the General Assembly, such as yourself, and members of the judiciary. It excuses the charge of unlawful use of weapons. I don't think anyone in the state legislature or the judiciary is any different than myself or anyone in this room. We are all citizens of Missouri, and we all deserve to be treated equally and accordingly to our Constitution of the state of Missouri and the United States. I oppose lowering the minimum age to 18 years of age. It has now been amended to 19. I believe the age shall be amended to 21. I don't think that young adults under 21 have the fortitude and the respect and the understanding of the weapon and the ramifications that they discharge or use a weapon in public. I just think that 21 is a good number to arrive at, and I'd like to see that amendment. Overall, I am now for the bill, and that's my testimony, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony. Anybody, any questions for Mr. Dienoff? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank you.
Anybody else here to testify in opposition? House Bill 282.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Jamie Morris, representing the Missouri Catholic Conference, here in opposition specifically to the guns in church portion of the bill. We recognize that places of worship have been targeted in recent years and that gun-free zones aren't a guarantee of safety. However, we feel that the current setup of the law works best in this situation where, as any other property owner, we can decide, who's allowed to carry and can set up our own security detail if so. Because really, I guess our view is what this does is it kind of makes it an all or nothing proposition where either, the pastor or the priest, whoever runs the church, has no idea who's carrying and has no control over it. Or if they have some concerns with that, then they're forced to, make it a gun-free zone, put sign near place of worship. And I don't know that anyone on either side of this issue really likes the gun-free zone target sitting out there. And so to us, it just makes sense to keep us on the list with daycares, schools, give us the same property rights as riverboat casinos and stuff in this situation. And again, for those reasons, we are in opposition.
Thank you. Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else here to testify in favor of House Bill 282?
These kids can't even get past the chairs, I swear. There ought to be a law. My name is Carl Smart. I'm the Vice President of Western Missouri Shooters Alliance, and I speak for myself and our group, and we very strongly support this bill. And we have done so for the last, 4 years now? By this time, we've pretty much heard all of the arguments for it and against it. And basically, from what I see, the opposition boils down to we're afraid of guns. Guns are bad, and there'll be blood and gore in the streets. Shootout in the OK Corral, and every time there's a gun bill comes up, we hear the exact same arguments. And after they pass, look at concealed carry, permitless carry. None of the predictions came true, and quite frankly, they're missing the point of concealed carry. The point is not to have shootouts. The point is to establish a level of doubt in the minds of the criminals. What I want them to do is look at Granny and wonder if that bulge in her bag is her knitting or her 9. And at that point, this kind of, we'll go somewhere else. So time is short. We've been through all of this before, and this committee has passed, send it out of this approved do pass. And last year, we got it as far as the Senate floor, and then the Senate closed down one day early, and poof, all of our work was gone. So I'm going to ask for a simple courtesy. Pass it out of this committee, send it to the Senate floor, so we were where we were last year, and give us a chance for an up or down vote on it. Thank you.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony.
Be excellent.
Anybody else here to testify in opposition to House Bill 282?
Watch out for the chairs. They're out to get us. Deadly.
Mr. Chairman, Shannon Cooper today representing the City of Kansas City and the Greater Kansas City Chamber of Commerce. We just want to go on record as we have in the past in opposition. And I'll just, state again there, unless I'm wrong, I don't see any Kansas City residents who consistently use our public transit here today to advocate for these changes. We're just off the past weekend of the NFL draft where we saw hundreds of thousands of folks from out of town, out of state come to the Kansas City area. Many of those did use our public transportation. Unless I missed it in the newspapers, there was not any incidences of violence where these visitors felt threatened or did not have the opportunity to defend themselves on the bus. So for those reasons, we continue to be in opposition of this legislation. Be happy to answer any questions.
Questions for Mr. Cooper? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody else here to testify in favor of House Bill 282? Anybody else here to testify in opposition?
Hi, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Fred Dreiling today representing the Kansas City Area Transportation Authority and City Utilities of Springfield, and we would just like to quickly go on record in opposition. As before, I've been before this committee several times, and I'm sure you don't want to hear my testimony again, so I will leave it at that.
Thank you for brevity. Any questions for Mr. Dreiling? No?
Thank you.
Thank you for testimony. Anybody else here to testify in opposition?
My name is Brian Kaler, and I'm president of Word and Way, a Christian organization here, based here in Jefferson City since 1896. As a Baptist minister, I'm opposed actually to the whole bill, but I want to focus on the part about churches and houses of worship. I think the current legislation is also not only the correct standard, but I think it raises some significant First Amendment problems if you pass this. When you start talking about requiring churches or other houses of worship to post signage, you have to be very careful when you're talking about forcing a house of worship to put up a message. There are some faith traditions that have sincerely held religious convictions as to why they do not want weapons of war in their sanctuaries. And so when you're telling them they either have to choose to allow that or to put up a government-required message, then you have to prove that this is the least restrictive way that you can do this, that the government has a compelling interest. And we already see that there's another way to allow concealed carry in houses of worship that want it. It's the status quo. The Second Amendment should not trump the First Amendment. And so I think this is a very dangerous proposition to push this. And frankly, I think it'd be ridiculous to say that riverboat gambling operations have greater First Amendment control over their property and what they say than a house of worship. So I urge you to vote against this legislation.
Questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else here to testify in opposition to House Bill 282?
Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Connor Lubert here to testify on behalf of the Missouri State Conference of the NAACP, and I just want to go on record against the bill.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you. Anybody else here to testify in opposition? Anybody else? Anybody here for informational purposes only?
If I may approach, I have a one-page handout that may assist in following my testimony. My name is Royce Barrondes. I am not engaged in the private practice of law. I am testifying in my personal capacity, and I do not purport to be speaking on behalf of my employer. Let me first turn to buses. I believe that, for example, if the bill is adopted, it will nevertheless remain a crime to carry a firearm in one's car in the parking lot of a private bus terminal that does not take public funds, even if one has a permit. I recommend a close look be taken at section 577.712 subsection 2.
Let me turn to some background concerning churches. As to churches, the primary component of current firearms law criminalizes firearms possession by persons who are relying on constitutional carry. That is a consequence of subdivision 8 of section 571.030.1, C item marked as number 6. This bill would not address that issue. Someone testifying against a different bill in the House said, in essence, churches wish not to have to post that firearms are prohibited, because if they have to post signs that firearms are not allowed, churches posting signs will become targets. In your consideration of bills protecting the civil right to bear arms, I recommend you consider the import of that observation. As to churches, the summary for the perfected bill is incomplete. It states, see item marked 1, quote, "This bill repeals prohibition on the concealed carrying of firearms in churches and other places of worship by a person with a valid concealed carry permit," end quote. The language the bill would repeal does not currently make it criminal for a holder of a traditional permit to possess a firearm in a church. The bill deletes a subdivision numbered 14, identified as number 4 in my handout. That fits into the current law as follows. Section 571.030, marked as item 2 on the handout, currently makes it unlawful weapons use to carry a firearm in certain locations. One set of the off-limits locations is identified by number 3 in the handout, places listed in section 571.107. There are 17 locations. The 14th is identified by number 4 in the handout, places of worship without consent. Under current law, the prohibition is not applicable to persons with traditional permits. That is identified by number 5 in the handout, which reproduces with modifications proposed by the bill, subsection 4 of section 571.030. In sum, as best as I can tell, this bill actually has a negligible impact on the activity of holders of traditional permits. But the bill would clarify that extended and lifetime permits get treated the same. I'm happy to entertain any questions.
Any questions for this witness? Seeing none, thank you for your testimony. Anybody else here to testify for informational purposes only? That'll conclude the hearing on House Bill 282. We're now going to go get our quorum, and then we'll go back into the hearing really quick to hear one more bill, and then we'll go into executive session. Ben, call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater, Brown, Bean, Eigel, Razor, Schroer, Williams.
Quorum being established, we will go back into the hearing, and Senator Brown, if you don't mind managing the hearing while I present Senate Bill 649.
Whenever you're ready, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Travis Fitzwater, 10th Senate District. Senate Bill 649 is pretty simple. It's a 2-page bill that says foreign adversaries recognized by the federal government can't own farmland in the state of Missouri. This has been a discussion the last several weeks. I filed a bill that kind of late in session that got sent to us late, and so just wanted to have the discussion on it. Wanted to have the hearing and available as a vehicle if needed to figure out something on foreign ownership of land. So that's kind of the whole intent of my bill. Glad to take any questions.
Any questions for Senator Fitzwater? Seeing none. Any witnesses to testify in favor of?
All right. Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Ben Travalos, Missouri Farm Bureau. As we have on the other foreign ownership agriculture bills, wanted to go on record in support. That I'd love to answer any questions.
Any questions for a witness? All right. Seeing none. Are there any other witnesses testifying in favor of the bill?
Thanks.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Arnie A.C. Dienoff, State Public Advocate, and I'm in favor of this legislation. Let's see here. I do have a constitutional question. I hope, hope this is written the right way, that it'll pass constitutional muster. And, you know, we have to be careful and cognizant of how we craft our legislation. Because as you know, we have Missourians that own foreign lands in other countries across the world. So we want to make sure that we don't hamper our Missourians with economic development in their ventures. Now, currently, there are some issues that I feel are very necessary and we need to follow and keep tabs of at a state level. China currently owns 40% of the foreign land owned across Missouri, and that's a big hunk, and that's of major concern. China keeps purchasing Missouri farmlands. Now, in 2022, the state legislature changed the state statute and allows only 1% of foreign ownership. But of that 1%, as I just stated, 40% is owned by China, and that's very concerning. We need to monitor and keep an eye on these purchases, and I would ask that an amendment of the sponsor be made to this bill to have not only the foreign corporation be registered with the Missouri Secretary of State, but they also register with the Missouri State Auditor, and that a report from the State Auditor be published on the State Auditor's website for all Missourians to keep track of foreign-owned property and lands. And then we make sure that we're not being inundated or there's some security or safety concerns of foreign countries into Missouri. That's my testimony, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for your testimony. Are there any questions for the witness? Senator Reigel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Arnie, I appreciate your testimony. Just a point of a clarification. You said in 2022, the legislature voted to create the 1% cap. I think you meant 2013 is when they created that 1% cap. It was not allowed at all prior to 2013, and then a vote was taken. That's important. I mean, I don't think anybody in the Senate today was in the Senate in 2013 when that vote was taken. I think that's what we're trying to address, trying to find the right way through. Is that the clarification? Is that correct?
Well, I did some research, and the Missouri Independent stated in 2022 the state legislature passed a state law limiting foreign ownership of Missouri lands, Missouri acreage, to 1% of overall acreage.
No, I
might be a mistake.
Perhaps that was confusing. I think it was in 2013 is the date you're looking for. That was.
Then it must be an error of the newspaper, so
Yeah,
I apologize.
Which happens. It
Yeah,
happens. It's okay.
yeah.
Okay. That's just wanted to clarify that. Thanks, Arnie.
Sure.
Any questions for the witness? Seeing none, thank you.
Thank
Are there any other witnesses to testify in favor of the bill? Any witnesses to testify in opposition? For informational purposes only. Senator, do you have any closing remarks? Thank you.
All right, we are going to move into executive session. I move that we go into executive session. Do I have a second? I have a second, so we'll move into, all those in favor vote, say aye. All those opposed, no. The ayes have it. We are in executive session. We're going to go through these bills. So we have the ones we heard today. We don't typically do this, but we're running up against a timeline on this. So we're going to go through House Bill 142, 282, and 392 today that we just heard. So start with 142. I asked that 142 I moved that 142 be brought before the committee. Do I have a second? I have a second. That's before the body. Any discussion on House Bill 142? That's Representative Sassman's license plate bill. Seeing none, I make a motion that we do pass House Bill 142. Having a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Ben, call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater,
Aye.
Brown, Bean, Eigel, Razor, Schroer, Williams.
By your vote of 5-0, you voted do pass House Bill 142. I now move that we bring up House Bill 282. Do I have a second? Having a second, that bill's before the body. This is Representative Schnelting's bill we just heard on firearms. I move that we vote do pass House Bill 282. Any discussion? Okay, having a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, Ben, call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater,
Aye.
Brown, Bean, Eigel, Razor, Schroer.
By your vote of 4-1, you voted do pass House Bill 282. I now move that we bring up House Bill 392 before the committee. Do I have a second? Having a second, that bill's before the body. I now move that we vote do pass House Bill 392. Do I have a second? That having a second, that's Representative Cherie Toalson Reisch's bill. We passed this a couple weeks ago. It's through this committee and through the Senate, so this bill has been considered a number of times. On Task Force 1. Missouri Task Force 1 updates. Any further discussion? Seeing none, Ben, call the roll.
Senators Fitzwater, Brown, Bean, Eigel, Razor, Schroer, Williams.
By your vote of 5-0, you voted do pass House Bill 392. Having no more business before the executive session, I move that we move out of executive session. Do I have a second? I have a second. We are out of executive session. That'll conclude the hearing on transportation, infrastructure, public safety.